Now, could the traditional mobile phone text message become a thing of the past? New research suggests SMS has already been overtaken by so-called chat apps as a favorite way to communicate with friends, family and colleagues. Now, with many developing countries still relying on the traditional text message, what could the chat app revolution mean for Africa? Now, with me is Dele Fatunla, web editor and a blogger at the Royal African Society in London. Thanks for joining us on the program. Why do you think instant messaging is becoming so popular and overtaking text messaging now?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on the show. But I think the reason why these things are popular is because, first of all, I mean, it's obviously driven by cost. It's much cheaper than, for example, a traditional SMS messaging once you have an internet connection or an internet access. And it's certainly one of the ways that you can communicate with many people in one go. So you can text one to many, and you can also text many to many people. So it makes it much cheaper to communicate.
But when you look at the continent, for instance, not very many people have access to internet or smartphones. Is there a rise in this use?
There certainly is a rise in terms of internet access. I mean, I think places like Nigeria and Kenya have grown exponentially in their sort of internet access in the past sort of 10 years because of sort of internet cables that have been laid and stuff like that. But there certainly still is a big barrier. There's a big digital divide in Africa, and it's increasingly becoming an urban-rural divide. So there is a big issue there.
Is there any sort of, you'd probably say, social impact?
Certainly, I mean, obviously, a lot of people don't necessarily think about North Africa as parts of Africa, but if you look at what happened in the Arab Spring, a lot of that was driven by internet services like, Twitter, which are also part of messaging services. So there is a big social impact. I think politically in Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, we're not going to see as much of a political impact until maybe later because, people first have to get used to using these services, probably socially, You can imagine if you're using this to text a group, you can organize a family gathering, and it's only when those sort of practices have been established that you can maybe use this to communicate on a political level.
So would you say this is the end of the good old text messaging?
I don't think it's going to die anytime soon. I think SMS is still very vital for a lot of people, particularly those, as I say, in rural areas who don't necessarily have access to a smartphone, which are still quite expensive.
Well, thank you very much indeed for coming in to talk to us. Dele Fatunla, web editor and blogger at the Royal African Society here in London.
My pleasure. Thank you, Sophie.